Hello everyone and welcome to this week's game development log video diary, and this week I've been restructuring huge amounts of my code to implement a component based architecture. So it's been 2 weeks since the last devlog video, and in those 2 weeks I have completely restructured probably about half of the code in my game. I wasn't entirely sure whether I should do a devlog video this week because I haven't got that much in the way of new content to show, but in the end I thought that a code related devlog is better than no devlog at all. So in this video it's going to be a bit more behind the scenes than usual. There's not going to be much in-game footage, but I just want to explain to you guys what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. It's all been about the entity hierarchy in my game's code. When I started programming my game 2 years ago, it seemed logical to make use of Java's inheritance to allow for different types of entities in the game. So I had the superclass entity, which all entities in the world would be a subclass of. I then had a hierarchical tree of different subclasses of entity, with each class containing the code for certain bits of functionality. But after a while I realised that some classes had similar code to other classes, such as the player and other player class, which is the class that represents other online players. So I reshuffled the code to create the human entity class that would deal with any shared functionality between the two classes. But as I went on and added more and more types of entity, the code became more and more unmanageable, and I kept having to do large amounts of restructuring to allow for new entities to fit into the hierarchy. The system was becoming extremely hard for me to work with, and a lot of work to keep updated. As well as that problem, it was becoming trickier and trickier to add new classes to the hierarchy. Imagine, for example, I wanted to add a static combat target that you could try out your attacks on to see how good they are. At first it would make sense to extend static entity, but I would also want the targets to have health bars, a functionality which is only available for living entities and child classes of that class. I could duplicate the health bar code to put it once again in the combat target class, but that definitely doesn't feel right. I could add it to the entity class so that the code only has to be implemented once and all entities would have the option of having a health bar, but that would be a bit of an overkill and the entity class would very quickly become too big. The final option would be to make combat target extend living entity, which would give it access to the health bar functionality, but it would also give it access to the functionality to attack, collide, move and be animated, none of which would be needed. All in all, there was no right way to do it, so I had to scrap the whole system entirely. So now I have a component based architecture. I just have one entity class now, which is entity. No subclasses, no inheritance, just entity. I then put all of the different functionalities into their own classes, which are components. Then, to create an entity in the game, I just have to add the necessary components to that entity. So, to create a tree entity, for example, I would give it a collision box, maybe a nice particle effect for falling leaves, obviously a model and a texture, and a position, rotation and scale. If I wanted to make an NPC, I don't have to create a new subclass of entity or even a new class at all. I can just create an instance of the entity class and then add all the functionality I want to that instance. And I can show you how this looks in the code. So I've got an entity blueprint for a tree here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add some components to it, such as a collision box, the ability to emit sounds, a looping sound effect, and a particle system that I set up earlier in the code. So if we have a look in the game now, you'll see that all the trees now have this falling leaf particle effect. They all emit this horrible sound when you get close to them, and the player collides with them. If we want to change any functionality of the tree entity, then it is super simple. We can go back into the code, remove the sound emitting component, and maybe add a health bar to the trees. So here I'll set the name, profile picture and maximum health of the trees. And then if we have a look at that in game, you can see that every tree now has a profile and a health bar, just from adding one line of code. This whole update is going to make the entity editor program extremely powerful and will make it really easy to create loads of awesome and unique entities and mobs for the game. I only started work on the entity editor yesterday, so I haven't got very far with it yet, but I should hopefully have it all done by the end of next week. But that is it for this week. Sorry that there wasn't too much in the way of new content to show, but unfortunately game development isn't always just about adding cool new features and effects. Don't forget to send me an email if you're interested in using the upcoming development kit to help create content for my game, and do keep in touch via my Facebook, Twitter and IndieDB pages. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching this video. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you all next time.